John Kraljevich, I'm rolling tape.
All right, let's do it. Let's roll.
Actually, there's no tape involved. I'm rolling a hard drive.
Fair enough.
This is, what the heck is this? This is the YCDP, the York County Democratic Party TV podcast thing. Episode 1.
Sure. Yeah, that title works. Let's do it.
Yeah, episode 1. And let's see. I'm Gary Pearce. I am, I'm going to call myself the producer here, I guess.
Sure.
And no, you're not Dan Dunn.
I'm not.
John Kraljevich,
Yeah.
Chairman of the York County Democratic Party. And so what's the deal? Oh, I've got a show title too. This won't make much sense for a while.
That's very Star Wars. I like it.
Episode 1. Help me,
Yeah.
Obi-Don Kenobi.
I like it.
You're our last best hope. That'll be part of what we're going to talk about today.
Good deal.
So what is this? We met about a year ago when you came on Zoom to talk to our local Democratic group here in the neighborhood that I live in, Carolina Orchards. And ever since then, I have had in mind that I think it would be a good idea for the York County Democratic Party to do some YouTube shows and podcasts. And now, almost a year later, here we are.
I mean, it's been a busy year for both of us. So, I get it. It's all right.
Yeah, that's true. But, what do they say? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
Let's plant it today.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Here we go. York County is kind of a black hole for media political coverage.
It is. It is. Charlotte TV has been a lot better to us recently than they used to be. I started getting involved in Democratic politics around here in 2014. But in 2016, we had, some pretty high profile campaigns and candidates. Needless to say, there was a Democratic primary that year. And it was very, very tough to get any sort of press out of Charlotte TV. And of course, radio is even worse. It's gotten better lately. A lot of the Charlotte TV stations now have dedicated York County or suburban South Carolina or upstate correspondents. We're in touch with them. So I see that situation improving just because the population here is so much bigger and the Charlotte media market, has to pay attention to those who don't actually live either in uptown Charlotte, in the city of Charlotte, in Mecklenburg County, or even, in the state of North Carolina. So in terms of media coverage, it's getting better. The Charlotte Observer still pretty much ignores us, but that's fine. The problem when it comes to media is paid media from campaigns. It's awfully tough to buy Charlotte. It is tough to buy media in the Charlotte media market. Yeah, we can talk about the why of that if you want.
Well, too expensive, and your message is getting out to 90% of an audience that can't vote for you, doesn't care.
That's exactly right. Yeah, 8% of the Charlotte media audience is thought to be in South Carolina, the cost benefit ratio just doesn't work. There's no return on investment there because, yes, as you said, Charlotte media is very expensive, and it's particularly expensive when there's a whole bunch of competitive political campaigns in North Carolina fighting for that same ad space, fighting for that same program schedule. We just don't have as much money here as, say, a North Carolina Senate candidate or gubernatorial candidate or what have you.
Yeah, and even when they cover what's going on down here, they cover big traffic accidents and scandals, and doing an interview with even a congressional candidate is going to be pretty rare.
Yeah, they don't do that a whole lot.
Yeah,
and then, it's the scandals that they like to cover.
Yeah, and more local races. The congressional candidates. This is a big race. A more local race, a city council or a county council, state house representative. They get nothing out of Charlotte.
Yeah, so never happening.
And we're in terms of politics. The guys in Columbia do a lot more politics, but they don't cover here because their signals don't get up here. We can't see them.
That's right.
Can't see them on TV. Can't see them on cable. We got CN2, the Comporium cable channel, and they do some.
Yes,
I like to say that their primary headline is that bunnies are still cute and fuzzy, because they do the soft stuff, but they interview the candidates. You can get
they do. They do more than anybody else does in terms of local politics, for sure. They remain, York County centered, and they've got real reporters doing real interviews with, people that are in the party process and candidates. So I'm really grateful that they're here, even if the production values or viewership isn't quite what it is in a big market.
Yeah. Do you get the impression that anybody actually sees it, though?
I've never seen any numbers on it. I have to assume someone's watching because somebody's buying the ads, and as well as I do how media sales work. They're showing somebody a brochure showing how many people are watching, and someone's buying those ads. So I have to assume someone's watching, but I have no idea what the composition of their viewership is. If I had to guess, it probably skews older. But that's okay. I think most TV audiences probably skew older at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty much TV. We got a radio station in Rock Hill, WRHI.
Right.
They do some, they actually do a lot of interviews. And in campaign season, they'll interview all the political candidates.
That's right.
They're not like really in depth. And I don't know, do they editorialize much? I don't listen to them much.
Well, I mean, the station as a whole is a pretty conservative station. They run Hannity, they, run that kind of stuff. So their audience is clearly, more white male and conservative than, other potential slices of the media demographic. That being said, their main public outreach program is a program called Straight Talk, hosted by one of the station owners, Manning Kimmel. And, I don't think anybody doubts that Manning is a relatively conservative guy, but he also is very fair. When it comes to, like you said, interviewing candidates, interviewing, newsmakers, and I think he really tries to get to the heart of issues in a way that I think improves understanding as opposed to, masking what's really important. So I'm grateful they're here too, even if they aren't entirely on our side, and even if their viewer or listenership isn't entirely on our side.
Yeah, and it's another question is how well do they reach people? I mean, they're on AM, but they got an FM translator. It doesn't cover the whole county. I don't think it's kind of a translator thing.
Yeah, that's right. They're pretty Rock Hill focused. I don't really know, how many people in Fort Mill or York or elsewhere are listening, but I think in Rock Hill, people that want that local news, I think they tune in, especially people that are kind of already tuned in. So it's hard to reach the people that aren't already tuned in, needless to say. So,
yeah. And then what else do we have out there? There's a newspaper in Rock Hill.
So, the Rock Hill Herald is a McClatchy paper. So, most of their content, most of their ink spill at this point is going to be content from the state in Columbia, or the Observer in Charlotte, or the News and Observer up in the Triangle area. They do have a couple of local political reporters. They're nice people. They do a good job. They just, aren't covering us all that much because there's a lot to cover and there's only a few, reporters. The Post and Courier, actually, out of Charleston, is really trying to sort of threaten that hegemony of McClatchy newspapers in South Carolina. And they actually now have a Rock Hill dedicated reporter.
Okay, so they're trying to be a South Carolina paper, not a Charleston paper.
They really are.
Kind of like the Washington Post isn't a Washington paper anymore.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, the Post and Courier has always done a good job on political stuff. Honestly, they've always given political stuff up here more coverage than any other paper, despite the fact that we're 3 hours away. And now the fact that they have a Rock Hill office, I think, is really helpful.
Okay. I didn't know they had a Rock Hill office. So cool.
That's brand new. That is brand new.
Excellent. So if you want to reach the party faithful and beyond, what do you do?
Well, we basically have to have two primary outreach channels. We have an email list. We send an email out. We kind of take some time off after election season when everyone's, including me, is fatigued. But we have an email newsletter that goes out usually every late night, Monday night, Tuesday morning, called the Monday Message. A couple thousand people on that email list. And for nonprofit email blasts, there are industry standards that, you expect 10 to 15% of people to open it, a much smaller percentage to actually click on links, etc. And our open percentage is actually about half. So any given week, we'll be reaching, roughly 1,000 people to actually read our email newsletter. Now, how in depth they read it or how far down they burrow, that I can't tell you. But
you don't have little trackers on it to check the eyeballs and watch the scrolling.
We do have some of that, so we can tell which links they're hitting, that sort of thing. So, that sort of metric is useful. So we've got that. We've got two areas of presence on Facebook. we have sort of our public-facing Facebook page. Facebook calls that a page, and that's where we put up, stuff for public, stuff that can be shared. And that tends to be comments on news of the day, comments on candidates and campaigns, that sort of thing. And then we have a private group. Facebook calls it a group, and that is again a four-figure membership there. And that's where we actually discuss organizing, helping campaigns, issues. There's the group. And you can see it says group by York County SC Democratic Party, and that's the name of our page. And that's so that we don't get confused with the York County Party in Pennsylvania, Maine, Virginia, or anywhere else.
There's a lot of York counties out there.
A lot of Yorks out there, yeah. So you can see there that the private group has roughly 1,400 members. And that's really our primary vehicle for reaching out in terms of, hey, we're having a meeting. Hey, there's this candidate that needs your help. Hey, there's this issue. Let's discuss it. Let's answer questions. That's kind of where most of that happens. Now, the Facebook algorithm is a finicky thing. And that means
you're being kind.
I'm being very kind.
It's a sucky thing.
It's not good. It used to be a lot better. Facebook prioritizes content that you look at frequently, which means if you haven't been clicking on the York County Democrats group every day for a week, they're going to de-emphasize it in your feed, which means the people that we most want to reach, in other words, the people that maybe aren't completely plugged in who need this information, are the ones least likely to see it. And unfortunately, it's the same with email, so it's short of having an old-fashioned phone tree where you give everybody 10 names and say, call these people, tell them what's up. It's not cost effective to send out mail to everyone. Mail's very expensive. You can't really knock on everybody's door. It's tough to reach even the party faithful, let alone people outside of the party faithful. It's very tough.
If you knew how, you had a guaranteed way to do that, you would be the smartest political operative in the country.
It's tough.
Because nobody knows how.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Okay, so now we got one more thing. We got a TV show.
Yeah. We'll see if they find it. I mean, that's there's an old saying in the world of politics that doesn't matter how good your ideas are or how smart you are as a candidate, it doesn't matter if nobody knows who the hell you are. And it's sort of the same thing with any of this content. I mean, you could be producing the best content in the world. You can have, the most, informative newsletter or the best Facebook discussions. But if people aren't seeing it or finding it, it doesn't matter. And making that connection is the most challenging part of this business, for sure.
And people watching and people consuming any of the party media can help by sharing it, telling their friends, spreading it around. That doesn't really happen very well.
That's right.
Some of the other podcasts that I do, I make a joke. I'll say, you could tell someone about this podcast, but of course that's a problem for you because then they go look at the podcast and say, you like that? I'm going to have to reassess my opinion of you now. But
and the other thing that helps is when people do things like a share on Facebook or a like on Facebook, that reemphasizes that content into their feed with the algorithm. So, people who interact in the Facebook group, they're the ones that's going to see the Facebook group more often. So, if people just went in there and dropped a like once a week, just made a habit to go in and like some comment, they're going to see the other content in that group more often.
Yeah. And you can specifically go to the group and look down at everything that is there, and you can make a bookmark on your browser. Or does anybody actually look at Facebook through a browser anymore besides me? It's on your phone. You can make a bookmark on your phone, I guess.
There you go. Yeah,
and go straight to it. But that means you care a lot. It means you're probably already seeing that stuff.
That's right.
Anyway, so we'll see. One of the advantages of this is it puts a voice and a face to the party. Sure. And so right now it's yours and mine. And I'm hoping if we do this a couple times a month, maybe do some short form stuff, some long form stuff, discussions. We'll get some of the other board members and candidates and office holders. Maybe what they'll do is they'll see this and say, oh, I want me some of that.
Yeah, I mean, generally the most dangerous place in the world is between a politician and a camera, so it shouldn't be too terribly hard,
Yeah, yep, we'll see. Okay, so like I said, it's kind of a late start. I was hoping to get this ginned up before the election, and what I did was I volunteered to some of our local candidates to make some media for them. I'm a retired television broadcast engineer, I'm voiceover guy, audio engineer, and of the past decade or more, very active podcaster on some other things. And I've got this capability here. Let me show you. I'll show you the studio here. This is This is impressive.
Oh, very nice.
Studio in a bonus room above the garage at the north end of Fort Mill. So I got this capability, and I'm retired, and I offered it for free to local candidates. And one of them, Evangeline Hunley, who was running for Congress, said, yes, please. And she kept me full-time busy all summer long. So I didn't really get to do more of this. So now it's time to do this. And once again, tell everyone you know, and hope that they don't judge you harshly for it. Tell your you know who's watching? I don't know how many Democrats we're going to get watching. Every Republican is going to be watching. Yeah,
they'll want to know all of our secrets, all of our weak points. And, honestly, our secrets and weak points are probably more or less the same as theirs, except, our ideas are better. So
what are these guys doing? These Democrats, they got a TV show. We need a TV show.
That's right.
One other thing I wanted to mention about the Facebook group is you can't share out of the Facebook group. That's a sad thing. It's the way Facebook sets things up. That's right. You can't push a share button for something that somebody posts there. You can. There's some tricks where you can actually get the web link to it and share that, but that's kind of inside baseball stuff.
It is. Yeah.
So, all right, moving down the hit parade. You know that Ralph Norman guy?
I do.
Our esteemed congressional representative here in the 5th District, 5th District, probably even party faithful don't have a strong grasp of all of the details and intricacies of politics. And one of those things is, where's the 5th District? Am I in the 5th District? Who else is in the 5th District? How big is it? All of York County is in the 5th District. And most of the surrounding counties are in the 5th District. So it's from north of Columbia up to the state line, west out to Gaffney or so, east into Lancaster County. It's big. There's only 7 congressional.
It's 10 counties. It used to be parts of 11 counties, but they took Newberry out in the recent redistricting. So now we are all or part of 10 different counties in the geographic area you described.
Okay. But if you're in York County, you're in the 5th District.
That's right.
And Ralph Norman is your congressman.
He sure is.
And on January 2021, somewhere in between, this is in between the January 6th insurrection, when they stormed the Capitol, and the January 21st inauguration. So in that time in between, he sent a text to President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who I guess is also a South Carolinian.
He is now. He represented North Carolina in Congress, but
North Carolina. Okay, but he moved. He lives. He's one of us now. He sent a text to Mark Meadows along with a bunch of other congressmen. We only found out about it now this week because the January 6th committee got a dump from Mark Meadows' phone and all the text messages. And this is how I found out about it first earlier this week.
On January 17th last year, just to get your head around what was going on that date, that was just 3 days before Joe Biden was set to be inaugurated as the new president of the United States. 11 days before January 17th was January 6th, when the pro-Trump mob stormed into Congress to try to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's election as the new president. It is a week and a half since January 6th, and it is 3 days until the inauguration. And on that date, January 17th, here is a text message that was sent to Donald Trump's White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. It says, quote, Mark, in seeing what's happening so quickly and reading about the Dominion lawsuits attempting to stop any meaningful investigation, we are at a point of no return in saving our republic! Exclamation point, exclamation point. Our, all caps, last hope is invoking martial law. Please urge to President to do so. Call out the troops, use military force, use weapons of war against the American public in order to stop the inauguration of the new president and instead put Trump in power. This text message was not from some rando who just guessed the phone number of the White House Chief of Staff.
It was a rando.
No, this text message was from a sitting member of the United States Congress, Republican Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina. Congressman Norman was a sitting member of Congress when he sent that. He is still one now. Ralph Norman was just reelected to Congress in South Carolina's 5th Congressional District. And he was reelected by a lot. He was reelected by like a 2-to-1 margin.
Yeah. And we are so proud to be represented by. He doesn't get a lot of national media.
No, in fact, it's an old joke around here that when our congressman, and this goes back to the Mick Mulvaney days, when our congressman makes national news, it's never good news.
No,
it's never they adopted a puppy or something. You know?
Yeah, he made a lot of national news this week. He was on all of the late night talk shows.
Yep.
And real network newscasts.
Yep.
And not Fox News. Somehow they didn't manage to notice.
Oddly enough, yes, the self-proclaimed defenders of the Constitution get to ignore when people, try to overthrow the Constitution. So,
yep, and he got noticed, around the state. Here's this is, I think, the newspaper out of Columbia.
That's right. Yep.
So, they noticed it. I mean, it made New York Times. It made Washington Post. It was pretty much all over the place. He wasn't the only one, but for some reason, he's the poster boy for this. You're the last hope. Let's declare martial law. Let's send in the troops. Let's keep Trump in office by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And so you reacted to that as the chairman of the York County Democratic Party. You sent out a press release and basically called for his resignation.
Yep.
What was your thinking about that?
Well, when the news came out, the board convened and said, what would you like to do about this? Here's this guy. We have people on our board who are, longtime advocates for democracy, longtime community leaders. We have, veterans. These are people that care about the American Republic very deeply, aside from the Democratic Party. These are people that really, care about the future of this country. And so we convened and said, all right, so when this guy who has taken an oath to defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that's the verbiage that he swore to with his hand on a holy Bible. When a guy very obviously violates that oath in front of man and God, when a guy stands up and promises that to his constituents and everyone else, and then in a very real way decides to violate that, how do we respond as the sort of loyal opposition around here, and as people who care very deeply about the U.S. Constitution, about the ideals of this country, about the service that some have put towards it? How do we handle that? And so the decision was made to call in his resignation, and we drafted up that press release, and I put a quote in there, and luckily it got some traction, and it got some news attention, and I've heard from a lot of people since then, people that are not active members of the York County Democratic Party, people that I'm not previously familiar with, who reached out to said, how can I help get this guy out? Thank you for saying that. We agree that was a terrible thing. How do we help? Do you have a petition or something? And unfortunately, we don't do recalls in South Carolina. There are states that do that. We're not one of them. And unfortunately, the real answer to how do I get this guy out of office is, well, you missed your chance here about a month ago. We had an election, and you could have helped the person running against him.
Yeah.
Of course,
we didn't know about this during the election.
No, that's true. But I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, this is completely in line with Ralph Norman's rhetoric. I mean, dating back years. This is who he is. This is how he talks. This is how he behaves. And this is what he thinks about, the dynamic of, constitutional democracy and representative democracy and autocracy. This is where he is. And fortunately he'll be up again in another 2 years, but, his buddies in the South Carolina legislature, many of whom he actually served with there in the state house, have also drawn a district where it would be very, very tough to beat him. He's most apt to lose in a GOP primary, more apt to lose there than in a general election. And we'll just have to see if the GOP has the guts to compete against him with someone who maybe does respect the U.S. Constitution, which he clearly doesn't.
Yeah, he won, I think the ratio was like 65 to 37.
That's right.
At least in York County.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so you called for his resignation, which I don't think you expect, but no. It's a political publicity move. And the Post and Courier that we talked about a little bit earlier has sent an editorial to back that up.
Yeah, they followed suit. And I mean, that's unusual. I mean, I know we hear a lot of things from our friends on the right about how, left wing, the MSM mainstream media is and all this kind of stuff. The Post and Courier, they regularly endorse Republicans for all sorts of offices. They play it pretty down the middle. They're pretty fact-based. I don't always agree with their editorial content, and sometimes I think it skews a little bit to the right. Obviously, editorials can depend upon who the exact author is, but this was written by their editorial board. So this is the whole board of the newspaper came together and not only decided that this was an important thing to address, despite the fact that this is, hundreds of miles away from their core audience, but also an important thing to correct, and they felt the same way we did.
Yeah, and if it may be more impactful if a centrist to center right organization backs up a call like that. But that's exactly right. We still don't expect him to resign. This week he responded and said, obviously martial law was never warranted. The text message came from a source of frustration on the heels of countless unanswered questions about the integrity of the 2020 election without any way to slow down and examine those issues prior to the inauguration of a newly elected president.
Completely ignoring the fact that there were 60 court cases, not one of which showed any evidence or propensity to actually go their way.
Yeah, 62 actually, and he lost 61.
There you go.
And so won on a technicality. One of the things that he had mentioned in that text was the Dominion lawsuits. He was saying, reading about, and this is the only fact that he put in there, that reading about the Dominion lawsuits attempt to stop any meaningful investigation. And I don't know if you've been following the Dominion lawsuits. Dominion was the company that made the voting machines. And a lot of folks said, the voting machines were rigged. All of the investigation to analyze what was going on with the voting machine said, no, they weren't rigged. Things were on the up and up. But it's been a right-wing talking point that those voting machines were rigged. Dominion sued Fox News, One America News, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, a couple of other folks for defamation. Some of those suits have already been dropped. Some are still in court. I guess when he says reading about the Dominion lawsuits attempting to stop any meaningful investigation, those must be the lawsuits he's talking about. And if you've watched Fox News or anybody else, I don't think that they stopped any meaningful investigation. I don't think there was any chilling effect.
No, I think there were inquiries all over the place. And frankly, if we were rigging elections, we better get better at it. We sure lose a lot. We sure give up a lot of seemingly winnable seats if that's what we're doing. So, I mean, was his election rigged? Was his 2-1 margin rigged, or just when Democrats win? So,
yeah, in that election, Republicans did well almost everywhere.
That's exactly right. And he knows enough about court. He's been in enough court cases in his life. He's a grown-up. He's a developer. I mean, hell, he was part of the lawsuit against our local schools. He knows that courts gather evidence and objective people, survey that evidence, and people have their chance to say their piece, and then a decision is made. And, I got to wonder, does he really believe this stuff? Is this just politics for him? Is this just, Trump ass kissing for him? Or does he really in his heart of hearts believe that everything is rigged, which obviously, you can question the guy's judgment anyway, but that makes you question his intellect.
Yeah. And the rigged thing, again, that became the big Republican talking point, and everyone had to sign on. And then in order to get Trump's blessing for anything, you absolutely had to sign on to the Stop the Steal.
Right.
So Norman did some of that. Although when I saw him talk, he came to address our group, and this was early in the election cycle. He sounded like he was kind of leaning into the DeSantis camp already.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well. He had better things to say about DeSantis than he had about Trump. He said, I'll support whoever the candidate is. Uh-huh. And we're a long ways away from 24. It's right. It's a long ways away, and it'll be right on our doorstep before we know it.
We'll see where he's. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think any of these candidates are going to come around thinking, "Oh my God, if I'm going to win, I have to have Ralph Norman's blessing." But that's one of the only ways he gets to throw his weight around. I mean, he's a backbencher. He doesn't propose any meaningful legislation. He's never passed a meaningful bill. I apologize for a winter cold.
Yeah, no problem. At least it's not COVID, right? It's not COVID.
It's not COVID, no. All right, let's see if a dose of Dayquil helps.
Yeah, well, it might take a little while for that to kick in, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, no problem. Editing is a good thing.
It is, yeah.
But someday, someday it will be fun to do live and get feedback on those chat rooms and stuff.
Yeah, that would be good.
So, any last thoughts on Ralph Norman?
No, I mean, we'll see how he throws his weight around in 2024 and, to what extent they actually pay much attention to him. But, given that South Carolina is most meaningful in a primary for the Republicans and not particularly so in the general election, as soon as that primary happens, he'll be, back to not getting his phone calls answered, I would assume.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't hold out a lot of hope for any Democratic candidate against him. It's a sacrificial lamb.
Well,
I mean, that's a hard thing to say as chairman of the party, because you want someone to run and you want someone qualified and you want someone. Well, if you're going to say you want someone who has a chance, but there is no chance, it's a rock and a hard place position.
Here's the thing. All I can hope for in a district that was drawn to be safely Republican. All I can hope for is that someone runs a competitive campaign. Doesn't mean they're going to win. Doesn't mean they're likely to win. I want them to be competitive. And a competitive campaign essentially is political euphemism for a well-funded campaign. Ralph Norman is one of the wealthiest members of Congress. He can write himself a check. You can write unlimited checks to your own campaign. Obviously, there are contribution limits from others and from PACs and things like that. But he can write more or less an unlimited check to self-fund any campaign he wants. Whereas our candidates tend not to raise any money. The best funded campaign recently was Archie Parnell, raised over $1 million. In the 2017 special election, special elections are a whole different animal. We'll talk about those. He came within 3 points of beating Ralph Norman. Again, very different kind of circumstance. Not a general election electorate, much smaller electorate, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is, no matter how good a candidate is or how high energy they are or how much work they do, if you don't have many, many millions of dollars to spend on voter contact, and that could be mailers or digital ads or TV ads in particular, you're just not going to reach the people you need to reach. I saw something recently from a recent candidate who lost their election and said, look at me, I didn't raise any money at all, and I still got 35% of the vote. Well, that's kind of the point. There are
35%.
Let's say 35% of people who show up, would vote for Porky Pig or a ham sandwich if it said D next to their name. Don't congratulate you for getting that 35 or 40%. Anybody would. A sack of potatoes would. It doesn't matter. When people raise money, they raise money to communicate with voters who are either unlikely to vote, and that's called a get out the vote universe, people who, maybe agree with you but are just unlikely to show up, or people that are unlikely to vote for you if they do, and that's called a persuasion universe. Those are people you have to convince. And you spend the money to communicate, to talk to those people who are either unlikely to get off their couch and come vote, or are planning to vote but probably unlikely to vote for you. And that's what campaigns are about, is reaching those people. Don't congratulate yourself for getting the votes of people who are going to vote for you no matter what. That's not heroic. That's not even, of course you got those votes.
There's a whole show in that idea of who are we trying to reach? Who are we trying to sway?
Right.
You want to make sure the base comes out, and then you want to sway those people in the middle that you don't want to insult by saying they never pay attention and their opinions are formed by TV commercials, but they never pay attention and their opinions are formed by TV commercials.
Ultimately, you spend the most money reaching people who are the least informed.
Yeah.
But you know what? Their votes count just as much as someone who watches TV every day or reads the newspaper every day. So,
which is why the commercials and the campaigns are never focused on what's really going to happen in governing. They're going to focus on 2 or 3 of the hot button issues of the day that may or may not have some sway in the next 2 to 4 years of a governing cycle.
Right.
But they're not going to be the big deal. But they are the big deal in the campaign.
Is very different from governing. It's just a very different animal. Yeah. Campaign messaging is basically convincing people to show up and vote. And that means talking about issues, like you say, that maybe won't actually be in play in the government.
Yeah.
Now, Democrats, we're good at governing. we like governing. We like making rules, and we like passing bills, and we like, tweaking policies. That doesn't win elections. That makes us good at governing. It doesn't make Joe Blow get off the couch on a random Tuesday and show up. And so we have to raise money to get our message out, and we have to have a good message. And again, if you don't have any money at all, you can knock all the doors in the world. You can have all the energy in the world and shake as many hands as you want. You're just not going to get the votes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess the problem is you can't knock on all the doors. I'm wondering if the what they call canvassing, knocking on doors, is the most effective means of campaigning besides millions of dollars of TV.
Canvassing is helpful.
Are yard signs helpful?
No, they're not. We'll get to that in a second. Canvassing is not an end-all be-all. Essentially, we talk about every single time a message reaches a voter as an impression, as a touch. And a canvas is one touch. But a TV commercial is also a touch. A digital ad is also a touch. The amount of energy that goes into organizing canvassing and the amount of training that it takes for some random volunteer, and God bless them for doing it. I've knocked thousands of doors, and I'm grateful to all those who have. But training people on an appropriate message to deliver at the door that they're knocking on, and it might be different messages for different doors. Communicating that is very tough and takes a lot of time in it. And the all this campaign stuff is studied to the nth degree. People do cost-benefit analysis. Political science professors do this stuff. And they basically determine that a well-run field campaign, which is to say a well-organized canvassing effort, is probably worth 3 to 5 points, 3 to 5 percentage points. Now, in a small election, canvassing can be very important. If you're trying to get 1,200 votes and you're the candidate and you can go knock on 4,000 doors and talk to literally every voter you want to vote for you, that's very powerful, very persuasive. In a congressional election, when you need 100,000 votes, and the candidate themselves can maybe knock on 5 or 10,000, that's great. It's different levels of persuasion between I open my door and see some random volunteer, hey, I've got this stranger you've never heard of, you should vote for them, and the candidate themselves showing up and saying, hey, I'm the candidate, ask me anything, I'd like to have your support. Totally different levels of persuasion.
Yeah, but again, a candidate for a congressional office, for example, can't.
No, they just can't do it, especially in a rural state. AOC got a lot of credit for knocking as many doors she did. Well, shoot, you're in Queens. You can knock on 400 doors in a single building. It's a totally different animal. Yeah. I mean, here, we've got counties that if you want to hit 400 doors, you're going to put 50 miles in your car. It's just a totally different animal. And again, it's parts of a sort of, many-layered approach to voter contact. And just one form of impression isn't enough.
Yep. So like I say, I think there's a whole show in this. Yeah. And we got a couple other things to cover. We don't want to spend all day.
Yeah. And but also yard signs, waste of money. Hate them. Go ahead.
But candidates love them.
No, you know who loves them? Candidates don't love them. Candidates hate being in their garage at 2:00 in the morning assembling them. Volunteers who don't want to do anything else love them.
Okay.
This is me showing my support. You're not doing anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Go knock on doors. Go make phone calls.
I'm glad to hear you say that because, it's like, but other than I see a name I didn't recognize before, I think I'm going to go vote for that person. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. We can do a whole show on yard signs if you want. I'm very passionate on that particular issue.
So next thing on my list here is the 2022 election review. So out there in the world, in the United States, Democrats in most of the country did way better than expected. We lost 9 House seats. We actually gained a Senate seat, and the average in House seats in a midterm, where the party in the White House typically loses a lot, the average is 20, and the recent swings have been more like 50. And so to only lose 9 is a win, although we've lost the House in terms of control of the House. So I mean, it's a loss, but it could have been so much worse. And in the Senate, it's actually an interesting win.
Yeah. I mean, you go back, 2010, Obama lost 60 plus House seats. Clinton in 94 lost 50 plus. And for this president, who a lot of people have sort of tried to diminish his work and diminish his popularity to lose what? 9? Is that what the number 9, is? I mean, that's heroic. And that's a testament to what governing from the middle. It doesn't mean running from the middle, but governing from the middle is appealing to people. People trust Joe Biden.
Yeah. even our neighbors to the north in North Carolina now have a 50-50 congressional delegation.
They should.
So,
North Carolina's kind of a 50-50 state. That makes sense.
But until recently, it's been they had 13 districts, and it would be 10-3.
Right. Well,
50-50
that's the
state,
difference between
10-3.
letting the legislature draw the lines and letting a court or an independent body draw the lines.
Yeah,
So,
that was lawsuits, and no one's expecting them to duplicate that in 2 years. But we'll see. But in any case, at this point, they gained one seat because population has been growing there very fast. And so there's now 14 seats, and it's 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans because of the courts, courts drawing the maps. South Carolina, hoo boy.
I mean, ultimately, we are a 55-45 or at worst a 60-40 state. Even with changing demographics that I think mostly favor the Republicans here in the last 10 years, there is no reason we should be a 6-1 delegation.
Yeah, there are Democrats in South Carolina. That's the point.
Lots of us, hundreds of thousands of us.
Yep. Yeah. But as I looked across the aggregate of this election, as because we've been talking about 55-45, but this election was 60-40 or worse.
Yeah.
And not any better almost any place. 60-40 or worse. And so it's sort of like, well, what happened?
Well, a few things happened. You've got a popular incumbent governor in Henry McMaster who got to raise lots of money during his term of office and obviously closer to the campaign. And that money trickles down. Trickle down economics doesn't work in much of anything but politics. So I had somebody ask me recently, I got mailers from the state Republican Party. Why didn't our party do that? Well, you see, Henry McMaster raised however, many millions of dollars he raised. Tim Scott raised something like $60 million and basically was not running unopposed, but essentially, didn't have much competition for that Senate seat.
And I'll go with something that's a little bit sad for maybe not the viewers to this program, but even fairly engaged people in general. Like my wife could not tell you who Tim Scott is, and my wife will vote.
Yeah. Tim Scott's the most popular politician in the state of South Carolina.
Yeah, he's a senator. Yep. He's a black Republican senator, which is I'm not going to say no blacks should be Republicans. That would be a racist and dangerous thing to say. It's just a little odd. Statistically, it's an odd thing. But he's
in South Carolina, most of the numbers suggest that somewhat more than 1 in 10 black men are Republicans. So it's not as much of an outlier as you might think. But
okay. In any case, that's who he is. He's a senator and just reelected.
Right. And so he raised tens of millions of dollars. I think it was like $60 million. And he didn't have to spend any of that to save his seat. So what he was able to do was send money to what are called independent expenditures, IEs, or dark money, whatever. He could encourage his donors to support PACs. He could encourage his donors to support the state Republican Party. And when the state Republican Party or the state Democratic Party gets an extra money, they can spend that on down ballot candidates, or they can spend it on just sort of generic get out the vote efforts. So when we have a gubernatorial candidate, and I think Joe Cunningham was a good candidate, and I think his campaign had good ideas and good energy, he just didn't have the money to devote millions of dollars to, say, the state party to support other candidates who were running lower down on the ticket. And if you're spending money to get out a Republican voter, they're going to show up and vote for everybody. And it doesn't matter if that money is spent on a state house campaign or a Senate campaign or a gubernatorial campaign. If those impressions are being made on dedicated voters for one side or the other, encouraging them to get out, it's money that's going to be effective for everybody on the ballot. And they just have more money here than we do for a whole wide variety of reasons. So that makes it tough to compete, especially with the demographic headwind when, essentially we're outnumbered. It's not a completely insuperable advantage that they have, but it makes things challenging when the money is taken into account.
At this point, I find myself wanting to ask you how you maintain any enthusiasm at all. You exude enthusiasm and pragmatism.
Well, here's the thing. They need to know. When they say they, the people on the other side of the aisle. They need to know that we're here. And voters need to know that we're here. And nobody wants to take part in a hopeless cause. There's a reason you don't see a lot of people walking around with Cleveland Brown shirts on. Nobody wants to root for a hopeless team. They want to know that they've got a shot.
Well, there are Cubs fans.
They've had some success, Chicago people.
There were Cubs fans long before they had any success.
That's also true. But they need to see that there are good, high-quality candidates running competitive campaigns with their ideals in mind, and that they can work and improve the odds of people who share their ideals. If we can't offer them that, if we can't offer them candidates on the ballot, if we can't offer them a real party organization, if we can't offer them some hope, there's not much reason for anyone to get involved. And sometimes that hope means, hey, we're going to keep these people honest. You see some local politicians here in York County that were never responsive to constituents, never posted on social media, never answered questions, never showed up to things. All of a sudden, they've got a well-funded candidate, and all of a sudden, they're out there shaking hands, they're posted on social media, and you can make Republicans more responsive just by feeling a little bit of hot breath on the back of their neck. Sometimes we just have to be hot breath. Yeah. Also, we have to pick our spots. Rock Hill elects Democrats. We have an incumbent Democrat primarily from Rock Hill in the York County Council. We have an incumbent Democrat primarily from the south side of Rock Hill in the State House. There are opportunities around here to elect more Democrats. And so we need to pick our spots and support the candidates where they are. I mean, I'm proud that our incumbents went back into office this year. We supported them. They worked, they raised money, they communicated, and they're still there representing our ideals, even with all these headwinds locally.
Yeah. And then there's the tough elections like the school boards, where you don't know where the candidates are based on a letter next to their name because they're nonpartisan elections, but they're partisan.
That's right. Yeah. Everything around here is nonpartisan. We choose not to get involved in those elections for two reasons. A, we respect the fact that they're nonpartisan. We're not trying to get involved. And B, just because of the demographic makeup around here, generally we damage a candidate's chances by branding them as a Democrat.
Yeah.
Right? So what we can do with those kind of candidates, those who want us to, we can, help our people know who the right people are. But perhaps more importantly, we can tell our people who the wrong people are. And we're going to, we can say, look, we're not going to tell you who to vote for. But good Lord, don't vote for these people. They're nuts. And we did do a little bit of that this time. And like in Fort Mill, we were successful in keeping 3 of the 4 Crazy Moms for Liberty candidates off the school board. So
that's who I was thinking of, is that they got an endorsement from a far right-wing group, and that tells you a lot.
Yeah, it sure does.
Because all the candidates themselves, all they're going to say is, I want good quality education for the students and pay teachers more, things like that. So that's all you hear from them. You got to look around, you couch for a few buzzwords or keywords, and then you can sort of figure it out. And so I was voting in Fort Mill School District, and I was able to figure out who to vote for. It wasn't that hard. Right. I'm guessing that you like statistics, and
I am a bit of a data nerd. Yeah,
can get a lot out of them. So here's an interesting website. This is the state SC Votes. It's the South Carolina Election Commission, whatever they are. And I have this filtered for York County, for the results from York County, and this is across the ballot. Statewide election, governor, senators, stuff like that. But it's the vote that came out of York County. So this is us. And this very first one, I think, is really telling. This is the straight party vote. When I lived in North Carolina, they had eliminated the straight party ballot a few years ago. When I first voted there, I think they still had it, but after a while, they got rid of it. And so it was interesting to see that straight party voting, which is, you go into the voting booth and the first thing you're presented with is an opportunity to say, vote for all Democrats, all Republicans. And then as you go down the ballot, and if you check that, it will fill in check marks for all of those candidates.
That's right.
You can then make changes as you go down the ballot and say, easy choice, all Democrats, except in this race, I want the Libertarian, the Green Party, maybe even the Republican. You can do that. But the option for this straight party says, I think, a lot if you look at the statistics. 67% Republican, 31.5% Democrat in York County. And almost everybody else tends to fall in line. Looks like Joe Cunningham beat that odd just a little bit, but he was still like way behind, 60 to 37. The ballot is long. There's a lot of stuff to look at. I don't know if there's anything in particular that you like to pick out.
Well, let me mention a few things. If you scroll back up, you'll see statewide offices that have no Democrat running.
Yeah.
Comptroller General, State Treasurer, etc. People ask me all the time, why are there not Democrats running for those offices? We should have Democrats running for every office. That would be great. The way they determine filing fees by statute in South Carolina is as a percentage of the salary. Now, like in the state house, they make, $12,000 a year, whatever they make. So the filing fee is a couple $100. It's not a big deal. For something like Attorney General, where the salary is six figures, the percentage-based filing fee is several $1,000s. It is hard to get someone qualified for something like Attorney General, so some high-flying attorney, to make that effort to run when they know just putting their name on the ballot is going to cost them thousands of bucks. Let alone state treasurer or comptroller general, or, in county offices, things like coroner. A coroner makes six figures. Nobody wants to run up against an incumbent coroner that, good Lord, why is that a partisan position anyway? But nobody wants to, I'm not going to care when someone's, breaking my chest open when I'm a corpse if they're a Republican or a Democrat. But those filing fees essentially limit non-incumbents. And in Republican counties, that limits Democrats, and in Democratic counties, that limits Republicans. And that's by design. The people making these rules are incumbents. They're people in the state legislature, in the General Assembly. And it's kind of the same with the straight party voting. We're one of like 7 states that still has straight ticket voting options. But the districts here are all gerrymandered enough that even the Democrats who are incumbents in the General Assembly, they get elected by virtue of people showing up and voting straight party Democrat. They're not trying to change their meal ticket, and obviously neither are the Republicans. So, the incumbents of both parties are the guilty parties in terms of keeping that straight ticket voting around. I sometimes say Republicans are dogs and Democrats are cats, and Democrats want to go through and individually pick each and every, race. Republicans are very happy to go in, punch their ticket of loyalty, and walk the heck out of the booth. But that straight party ticket voting does not help us. It does not put people in a mind to split their ticket and vote for the most qualified candidate for anything. So
we'd be better off without it. But
I think we would.
But even the successful Democrats are not going to turn away from that.
No. And at this point, the makeup of the General Assembly, the Republicans have a supermajority. Yeah. The Democrats could go golfing every single day of work in 2023 and 2024, and nothing would change. Yeah. So,
and I was going to ask, when it came to finding those candidates and running the races that are not going to win but make our presence known, I was going to ask you, does that ever have any effect in ultimate legislation like it is proposed and passed at the State House or Congress? State House, I guess, is where we're really concerned.
I'm not sure it does. Obviously the people who are introducing bills are the people that get elected. So I'm not sure a even competitive challenger is going to have much impact on actual governance.
Yeah. Interesting. And these are details, especially the idea of how much it costs to file to run for some of these offices and why there's no Democrat. I consider myself to be pretty engaged, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. You were a font of knowledge, and let's get it out there.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason that you don't see Democrats running for solicitor or coroner or what have you.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Ellen Weaver line right here, and how she did against Lisa Ellis. This is an interesting thing. Lisa Ellis was listed on the ballots as both a Democrat and Alliance Party.
Yes, this will be the last year that you can run as a fusion candidate and have your name on both lines.
Oh, okay. Do you think that she ran in the Alliance Party because she didn't know if she would make it onto the ballot as a Democrat?
No, actually, their nomination followed the Democratic primary, if memory serves. I think that was basically to give people that don't like or trust either party an option that wasn't a member of either party.
Yeah.
I tend to think the whole fusion candidate thing is more, harmful than not. For instance, if someone's filling out an absentee ballot and they check both boxes because they don't know you're only allowed to check one box, their vote gets thrown out entirely. So, someone thinks they're voting for Lisa Ellis and checks off both places where they see her name. They've just managed to not vote for her at all.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm getting 2 votes for Lisa Ellis. And this is
exactly.
This is great.
I'm glad they're not doing that anymore. I thought it was always sort of a dumb idea.
So maybe I'm paying attention more to this because of the little commercial that Dan Dunn and I put together about Ellen Weaver and being unqualified.
This is Ellen Weaver, and these are our schools. Weaver wants to be South Carolina's next superintendent of education, but she's unqualified for the position. Her educational credentials are spotty at best, and she doesn't even have the master's degree required for the job.
Well, after months of controversy, a candidate for the superintendent of education has received her master's degree
after 6 months of study at Bob Jones University.
So it's been about a 6-month period.
Her degree typically takes anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to achieve.
So it's been about a 6-month period.
It's highly unusual for someone to be able to complete a master's degree in that time frame. In my personal experience, it's unprecedented.
So it's been about a 6-month period.
Her background is not even with education. It's with a far-right think tank. Ellen Weaver's not fit for this job. Ellen Weaver is not fit for our kids.
So it's been about a 6-month period.
She had that master's degree thing hanging over her head, sort of. Apparently, people didn't care. Although she didn't beat the odds on the straight party. She was below the straight party ballot.
Right.
Lisa did a little better. Add her 2 lines together, and she's over 40%.
Right.
So maybe people were swayed a little bit with the idea that Ellen Weaver got a 6-month master's degree from Bob Jones University.
So it's been about a 6-month period.
It's a
Christmas miracle. It's
a fun thing to talk about, if nothing else. It's a fun thing.
I think what the Lisa Ellis totals show is that the proportion of ticket splitters is relatively small. And if you're going to try to get people to split their ticket, you have to spend a lot of time and money communicating. Lisa Ellis didn't raise a ton of money. She probably could have raised, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars more and gotten a few percentage points more. But ultimately like I said, it's a 55-45 or 60-40 state. And, when Ellen Weaver has certain bodies of people behind her, it is easy to get somebody together in a church that seats 2,000 people and say, Ellen Weaver will protect your religious rights and tell 2,000 people all at once. Outside of African-American faith organizations, there's not any place you're ever going to find 2,000 Democrats all in one place in South Carolina. And that means that you have to spend a lot of money and time talking to them individually. And again, without raising a ton of money, that's really, really hard.
So we did early voting this year.
Yep.
Was this the first year that there was a significant early voting, or was that
second year? We had sort of a temporary early voting statute during the pandemic, and then this year was actually really put into law.
Yeah.
So
okay, but they did not allow early voting on Sunday.
That's right.
Because of the respect for religion and to keep the souls to the polls operation from taking hold in South Carolina.
Yeah. Voter suppression takes many little tiny chipping away forms. And that was one way that they could chip away at the Democratic vote, is by chipping away at that Black tradition. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. One last look at our local list of local candidates. And these are people whose names are just unknown to the voting population. Our State House of Representatives, District 66.
Yep.
Carla versus David O'Neill. Actually, a pretty respectable showing. She beat the straight party voting by quite a bit, but she still didn't make it. And then Matt Villardo and Ray Felder in my district here, it was pretty lopsided. Pay attention again, because it was in my district, paid attention more to Matt's campaign, and it seems like Matt ran a good campaign. And he was surprised at how lopsided the result came out.
Yeah. I mean, it was a district that, Ray Felder and her friends in the state house got to draw just for her by giving away some of the bluer parts of the district to District 66, where Carla was competitive, and picking up some redder parts, primarily from House District 45 over on the Indian land side. Ray Felder has been in Fort Mill and been well known in Fort Mill for 35 years. She's the only elected official that District 26, as it's been Fort Mill based, has ever elected. She's the only one that's ever been in that seat. That is very tough to overcome. And it's very tough to convince someone who has voted for Ray Felder every single time, you should not vote for her and vote for me. That takes a lot of persuasion, and persuading a dedicated voter takes two things. It takes a persuasion message that's going to be really meaningful, and that tends to mean capturing some very local issue that really grabs people by their lapels and shakes them up a little bit.
And once again,
and then the other part of that.
Yeah, one of those issues that is a campaign issue, but not a governance issue necessarily.
Correct. Yes, you have to really define the campaign narrative, as we say in campaign world. You have to pick the narrative and define it, and then you have to raise a ton of money to make sure everybody connects that narrative with your name and get everybody out to vote. Yeah, and that's really hard to do.
And when I look cynical about something like that, I guess I'm not saying to a candidate, don't do it, because it's effective. We know it's effective. That's why people do it. To grab that one issue that you're not going to spend your legislative career working on. You're going to spend your campaign career. We're not going to tell a candidate not to do that, because that's telling them, well, let's guarantee your loss.
Right.
So,
well, and that issue has to be something that comes across as nonpartisan. And in a district that was drawn to be Republican, identifying yourself and allying yourself with, Democratic issues, whether they be local or national, harms your ability to persuade that persuadable vote, which means that successful Democrats, honestly, sometimes run against the Democratic Party, and that's okay. Yeah. That's whatever you got to do.
In a state like this, especially. I mean, Kristen Sinema.
There you go.
All politics ain't local anymore.
No, it's not. And that has changed.
Were they ever? Let's say, were they? I guess they used to be.
They did used to be. Yeah. I mean, you look at the map of the South 10 or 12 or 15 years ago, in places where you have sort of heritage Democrats, generally white Southerners who called themselves Democrats, but were very conservative. And they would vote for local Democrats because they would say, by golly, I'm a Democrat, even though I'm, supporting Republicans in higher offices. That idea is gone. That's in the past. That doesn't exist anymore.
I actually saw one example of it not too long ago. It was in Kentucky. It was a Democrat.
Kentucky's a prime example.
Yeah, a Democrat holding an office, a local office, who would not give marriage certificates to gays.
Yeah.
But a Democrat. So, a former unreconstructed Dixiecrat.
Yeah, so that's right.
And there's probably still a few, in local offices around South Carolina, I would imagine.
I mean, West Virginia's kind of been the last holdout on that. Somebody like a Joe Manchin on a statewide level. But in terms of like local offices, they're pretty much going across the South at this point. Yeah.
All right, moving on. There's another election coming up.
There sure is. Yep. It's still election season.
Oh, my God.
No rest for the weary.
Yep. For a small section of York County, for York County Council District 6.
Yes. And small seat, nothing. Those county council districts are almost as big as state house districts. That's a big race. Ryan Stevens is our Democratic nominee. And I said we would talk about special elections. So here we are. Special elections are a really interesting opportunity for an underdog party. The people who show up in November elections are people that pay, some attention, but maybe not a lot. People that know there's an election on Tuesday, January 3rd,
which is
right
when
after
this one is coming up.
This one that's coming up, Tuesday, January 3rd. That's a very special self-selected electorate, which is to say it's going to be very low turnout, and the electorate, or in other words, the people who show up, is going to be composed only of people that pay a lot of attention. So that gives Democrats an opportunity. If we only get the diehard Democrats out and nobody else, if we don't persuade anybody, if we don't get out people who only vote in presidential elections, if we just get out the diehard Democrats, we win. That's it. But that comes down to, again, two things: giving people a message and spending enough money to make sure that they see the message. And that's the trick, even in a small election. But special elections are a great opportunity. And then once you're an incumbent, you get all those incumbent advantages.
Yeah. Why is this a special election? Why is there an election?
So it's a special election. Brandon Guffey was the former representative in this county council district. And he won it by virtue of winning a GOP primary against the former representative named Britt Blackwell. And he faced no Democratic opposition, despite the fact that this is a pretty purple seat. He faced no Democratic opposition in the general election. So when he won the GOP primary with something like 600 votes, it wasn't a big election. When he won that GOP primary, he was it. He was a new county councilman. And then he used one term in county council as a springboard to be elected to the state house. And he was so certain that he would win his state house race that he resigned his county council seat effective election day. And, said during his campaign that I'm done, I'm resigning. Let's have a special election. So
how long are the county seat terms? They're staggered.
Yeah, they're staggered now, but they're 2-year terms.
Okay, so they're staggered in 1-year increments.
No, I'm sorry. They're every 2 years. They're staggered. They're 4-year terms. That are every 2 years someone's up.
Okay, so this will be filling the remainder of a 4-year term, but it's still practically the beginning of the term.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
So he resigned, and on the election day when his resignation became certain, then the county elections people could say we're declaring a special election, and because of the amount of time, the primary will be X and the general election will be Y, and that places the general election on Tuesday, January 3rd, when almost no one will show up.
Yeah. Now, is there an early voting window? Is that there is early voting for this, but I'm not sure when it ends. So we took a guess at this, and we got it wrong by a lot. There is early voting from Monday, December 19th through Friday, December 30th. It's all at the York County Government Building in the town of York. They are closed on Saturday and Sunday and on holidays, which is probably also the Monday after Christmas. So you've got just about 2 weeks worth of early voting. And now back to our program already in progress.
Early voting only takes place for this election in one place, and that's in York, at the Government Center on Congress Street in York. That's the only place where you can early vote for this particular election.
Okay, and that isn't even that isn't even in the district, I don't think.
It's not, no, but that's the county seat. Or you can request a mail-in ballot and do it that way, or vote at your local precinct on January 3rd.
Yeah, I did all my early voting at that Government Center. Just it's a nice little drive from the Fort Mill area over to York.
Yep.
And it's a cute little town.
Yep.
And I go over there as often as I can for the Drinking Liberally group.
Yep.
That meets at the town tavern. I've been there a few times. And the Government Center is our tax dollars at work. That's right. The town is little trinkets and antiques and stuff. It's not a dying town. There were very few little. I mean, the storefronts are a block and a half long. Right. But they weren't all boarded up like a lot of little towns are. They're kind of going.
York's a special place with a lot of history.
Yeah, but then you go south of the town area, and there's the government complex, the courthouse, and then the county government center, which is a big modern new building.
Yep.
And you go down to the basement, and you find the voting office, and
and they're very helpful. We have a very professional staff at the Board of Voter Registration Elections. They want people to vote. They want people to know the rules. They want it to do it correctly. They are not partisan hacks. They are there to make sure people can vote as easily as possible and exercise their constitutional right. We're very, very lucky to have them. And
I take it back. I did my general election early voting at one of the centers here in Fort Mill. So,
at the community center. Yeah.
And that was also interesting. And I did the early voting like crazy. No interest in voting on election day and standing in line. Although I think my wife did the election day and she didn't have to stand in line. Yeah, most places it wasn't too bad. Yeah. Okay, so Ryan Stevens at January 3rd, early voting, and that you have to live in the 6th district if you want to vote for that. And I'm not sure. Mostly the north side of Rock Hill. Yeah, I'll put up the map. This purple area is District 6.
That's it. So you got Riverwalk, you've got the Celanese corridor, you've got, India Hook in that area. That whole big purple district is it.
Okay, so this dense area down here, that's downtown Rachael.
That's right.
And so we're looking a little bit north of Rachael, a little bit west of Fort Mill, a little bit east of York.
Yep.
And whatever towns are up here.
That's Lake Wiley primarily.
Yeah. So,
Over all that.
yeah, if you can find yourself in there, look at your voter registration. You can find out whether you're in District 6. But although only District 6 residents can vote, it affects everybody in the county because he will be on the county council. It'll still be a lopsided Republican majority, even if he wins. There'll be 2 Democrats, Bumbrati, the incumbent who's been in there for a while. Michael Schoenfeld was from District 7, I think, and he did not win.
That's
but
right.
He put up a good campaign.
Yep.
So it will affect everybody, and so you can support Ryan financially, or however you support your candidate, you can help him out, and get hopefully another Democrat on the York County Council. So
yeah, and I mean, while they get elected as partisans, the York County Council handles a lot of nonpartisan stuff. It's roads, it's filling potholes, it's planning, it's zoning, it's stuff like that. And Ryan's a good, sensible guy with a business background and would be a good candidate. But yeah, you can hit his Act Blue, find him on Facebook. There's Act Blue links on there. He will want volunteers to knock on doors to get out the vote. And again, if we just get Democrats out to vote, Ryan will win.
all right. One last thing. Gonna like this. Scott Shirley. What is going on? What's the deal here?
I don't know if it's nature or nurture with him, but someone needs to give that guy a hug because he's very angry.
Yep. Let me see if I can make a little video play here, because this actually got onto a Charlotte television.
Scott, where is Scott?
Neighbors in Tega Cay are looking for Councilman Scott Shirley. He called for a meeting at City Hall with town citizens early Friday afternoon to discuss controversial comments he made over the last year.
We had always thought he had done a lot of reckless things before he was running for office, and then he won, and we thought he would mature and take the governing job seriously. But unfortunately, he still goes off like a loose cannon whenever somebody challenges him.
But when neighbors arrived to challenge Shirley in council chambers, the building was closed and Shirley wasn't there. We called the councilman to hear his side of the issue.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
But he didn't answer.
I definitely wanted to get off work early and to show my support, because he is not representing Tega Cay at all. I've lived here for 22 years. This is not who we are.
Well, I think it's extra comical that they posted a sign that they closed City Hall early just for this today.
Neighbors were greeted with a sign on the City Hall door that read, "City Hall is closed due to short staffing and illness. We will resume normal operations on Monday, December 5th.
Shows a lot of, how much they're willing to talk to the public about this.
This is one of the posts that has neighbors outraged, where Shirley started off a statement saying, "Dear Mr. President," aka Pedophile Joe. Another post from Shirley's Facebook page references the home break-in and hammer attack of Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. When one commenter responded saying, "Is this the kind of compassion and respect that I should expect from a child of God?" Shirley responded, "He is a disgusting old man, a sexual deviant, a serial DUI offender and menace to public safety and society. He got what he asked for. That is the difference between me and many. I like the accountability for people's actions. That is godly."
To show up for a conversation with the residents would be holding himself accountable for that.
And we certainly do not want that type of representation coming from Scott Shirley. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating.
So we made Charlotte news on that.
Never good news when we make the news. It just isn't.
There are plenty of people who live in York County who subscribe to those whacked out ideas. Not all of them sit on city councils.
No. And here's the thing, that when Tega Cay has their city council elections, it's an off-year municipal. He got elected in 2021. So no Congress on the ballot, no president on the ballot. If just the Democratic voters of Tega Cay show up, that guy gets to sit home in his underwear, and doesn't get elected to a position of trust. So, but again, it's incumbent upon, candidates to identify a guy like that for who he is and define that narrative and get the word out, spend the money, and let people know what they're up against, and sometimes that's difficult in these off-year elections.
Yeah. All right, that's all I got.
All right, good. Well, thank you for this opportunity, and I appreciate the chance to reach out a little bit.
Yep. So let's gather together some of the other board members. I don't know. Do they all want to show their face on TV, or do some of them want to go hide?
You'll have to ask them. Obviously, as chair, I'm not allowed to be bashful, but you'll have to ask them. I have to assume that some of them would be very happy to join you.
I'm talking to you, York County Democratic Party board members. Let's come on the Facebook show. This is your show.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll just chew the fat. Sometimes we'll have, like today. Today was a gift that keeps on giving, just in terms of stories. Sometimes it'll just be a little bit more, Democrats chewing the fat. Yeah. Before the election, I was kind of hoping we could do some how-tos, how to early vote, how to do some research, showing some of the research on some of the candidates, but didn't get to do that. Like I say, the 2024 election is going to be in our laps.
We'll be here soon.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast, the 538 podcast and stuff I listen to, the podcast hosts are probing the guests for 2024 stuff. And the guests are saying, it's not even 2023 yet.
It doesn't even matter. You're going to start seeing all sorts of high-profile Republicans showing up here just to visit. Yeah. They'll be here soon.
Oh, they're telling me that at this point in the presidential 2016 presidential contest, Trump was an afterthought.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He was polling at 0 at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody thought. So things change fast.
It's a dynamic business for sure.
All right. Let's see. Can I put the right titles up here? Yeah, there you go. The York County Democratic Chair, John Kraljevich. I'm saying that right? Kraljevich?
Yeah, you sure are.
Yep. Okay, good. And we'll probably make you a regular on the show. Maybe I'll just disappear and you can talk to the other guys. I don't know.
No, I'm happy to have you hosting this. Yeah, this is great.
I kind of enjoy this. Yeah, my name's Gary Pearce. I'll call myself producer. I don't know, host, whatever
sure,
it is.
Whatever you want. Grand Poobah, president, you can be whatever you want.
Yep. Our last hope. Thank you, Ralph Norman. We at least appreciate the comedy.
That guy.
Okay. Yeah. See y'all guys whenever we do the next show.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, I'll push the stop recording button.